Hey Jexiteers, thanks again for stopping by. If you're new to the channel, my name is Riley and I'm a former Jehovah's Witness. And today I'm interviewing Jordan Robertson, a former Jehovah's Witness who left the organisation in 2017 and has recently become an ExJW Activist. So Jordan, thanks for joining me today.
Nice, pleasure.
How's it going?
Yes, yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, no, it's great to be on the channel. Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, thank you for joining me. So I stumbled across your first video recently. I think just in the past few days. It was this week actually. I stumbled across your channel and I watched your first video, and I reached out to you, and you replied, and we decided that we wanted to collaborate together.
Yes, yeah, like you said, it's good to get someone else in the UK. There's a lot of representation amongst the ExJW community on YouTube, but yeah, it's nice to find an extra face in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'm very keen to represent the UK a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think we could definitely put it on the map a bit more. Make a bit more awareness in the United Kingdom in the ExJW community.
Yeah, absolutely. So please tell us a bit about your story.
Well, I suppose if I go right back to the start, then I'm a born-in. So I was born in '94 and raised in the truth, and I was baptised at the tender age of 12, and I can still remember it to this day because I was the only one who got baptised that day. So that was a bit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I remember the moment where the brother asked me to stand up and in front of 900 people, and yeah, I'll never forget that day. But yeah, got baptised at 12. Like I said, raised in the truth. I always believed it growing up, but there was always an element of me that just wanted to be normal like every other kid. If you're raised in the truth, like yourself, you just want to be normal like other children, and you feel like you're missing out a little bit with Christmas, birthdays, etc. That resulted in a bit of bullying because obviously I went to public school. The earlier years were the toughest, I think, because you sort of stick out like a sore thumb and you stand out as different. So I struggled at school for a little bit, and then school got a bit easier as I got into my teens. But living at home, you never really question anything. I wouldn't say I was right on the edge of the organisation in terms of always wanting to, potentially going to come out of it. I wouldn't say I was in the centre either. I knew it was the truth, but then there were elements that, like I said, I just wanted to be normal like every other kid. And I remember when I was about 14 or 15, I had opportunities to get into professional football, or go for a trial at a local team. And I really wanted to do it. And my parents both stopped it, but it was my mum who, I'll never forget what she said to me. She said, you can't commit to football and Jehovah. You've got to go to the meetings. You've got to do the ministry. So that's like one regret I've got, is I never had the opportunity to see if I could have gone down that avenue. Pioneered a few times. As I got older, I had privileges in the congregation. I did the sound, did the mics, so kind of like your standard young brother in the congregation, really. I'm not like an ultra spiritual brother, but I believed it, went along with it, never really questioned it. And then in 2013, I decided to grow a beard, and that was my first experience of elders and the control and manipulation they can have on a local level. And I was on the sound, and I remember it was my turn to do the sound, and it was also my first meeting. I turned up with a beard, so I had a lot of people look at me a bit weirdly. And I'll never forget the coordinator of the congregation at the time. He beelined for me as soon as he came into the Kingdom Hall, and come up to me and just said, "You can't do the sound tonight." And through my head, I knew what was coming, but I sort of said to him, "Well, why can't I do the sound? Or what have I done wrong?" And he just looked at me and did this to me. So I got thrown off the sound that night. Was no longer allowed to do the mics, read the paragraphs, etc.
So can I ask what justification did they give you for that?
Well, it's a good question, because that's exactly what I asked. My dad's an elder, so I had a little bit of an inkling of what elders could and can't do. To the rank and file in terms of counselling. And when it comes to counselling people, they need to provide scriptural proof, for which there is none. There's different scriptures where they try and sort of use that as an example. Just because it's your right. I can't remember it, the exact word.
All things are lawful, but not all things are advantageous.
That's it. And they tried to use that one on me, and that just didn't wash. Because I came back by saying, where's a specific scripture where it says I can't have a beard? And then if you just look at the Watchtowers, all the apostles, Jesus, they all had a beard. Charles Taze Russell, the founder of the religion, had a beard. But I got sort of palmed off with that scripture, and then he sort of mentioned like the hippies in the 80s. There was a bit of an uproar, and I remember they said they wanted to discourage beards, to stay away from that movement. But I said, well, that's all well and good, but we're in 2013 now.
Yeah.
So that didn't wash with me at all. And I think out of the body of elders, I'd say 80% of them just didn't personally like beards. So because I'd actually grown one, like I said, they took me off, lost all my privileges, and they really wanted to make an example out of me in the congregation, because there was a few young brothers around my age that they really wanted to make an example out of me. So they took me off of everything, and couldn't do the mics, barely give talks. And even certain elders went as far as to not take my hand during the Watchtower sometimes, and stop talking to me. Yeah, there's certain brothers on the body of elders who have been in a very long time, so they've seen the organisation change over years, but they're still stuck in their old ways on a personal level. And they sometimes wouldn't even take my hand on the Watchtower.
Wow. Funny you should say that, because I remember when I was in my mid-teens, there was a circuit overseer who had a real bee in his bonnet about coloured shirts.
Really?
Yeah, he had a real bee in his bonnet about coloured shirts. It was like any colour other than white was just wrong in his eyes. And at a circuit assembly once, he came onto the platform and he made a comment about brothers in the audience looking like peacocks wearing colourful shirts. And I heard, this is only a rumour, but I heard that he actually got reprimanded for saying that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know there's some congregations like my dad, because he would wear coloured shirts. But I remember growing up, there was a few congregations, because it's like you can go to one congregation and a beard might be okay, or a coloured shirt might be okay, but you go to another one and it's like, oh, if you want to give a talk here again, don't send a brother with a beard, or don't send a brother with a coloured shirt. And they got a real stigma with jackets as well, haven't they? You have to wear a suit, don't you?
Exactly. You can't just wear like a smart jacket and a nice smart pair of trousers. It has to be a suit. Yeah. It was never that in my last congregation. My last congregation wasn't like that. I actually had a beard for quite some time. Like once a year, I would grow a beard for like 2 months, just to give my face a change. And I know there were a couple of brothers that didn't like it, but it never held me back from having privileges. So it varies from place to place.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because the congregation I was born and raised in, obviously they were very anti-beard, and this treatment led me to leave that congregation for about 6 months, and I went to another neighbouring congregation who didn't have a problem with beards. I walked into their congregation and they said, yeah, you can do the mics, you can do the sound, give talks, answer up. They didn't have an issue with beards. And it's that kind of level of inconsistency, that was just like, again, with a few other things, that started to sort of play on my mind a little bit. But being living at home still, it's still not enough for me to just, fully question it, going with an open mind and do my own research, shall we say. But You know, I'll never forget as well, talking about the beards, I don't know if you remember, there was a Watchtower that came out. I think it was about 3 years after, about 2015, 2016. I'd have to do the research.
Yeah.
And they had a whole section on dress and grooming.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it. If I saw the Watchtower in front of me, I know it's paragraph 18. I can't remember what the title of the article was. But on that paragraph 18, it dealt with beards. Because I think the governing body were aware this was becoming a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
Because the previous year I went to Twickenham for the convention. And I had international delegates come up to me from America saying, "Oh, so how long have you been studying?" And I go, I'm a born here. I've been raised, you know, I'm baptised. I've been baptised for a long time. Oh, you know, it's just because you got a beard in America. You're not allowed to have a beard. And, you know, it's just little things like that. But going back to that Watchtower, the question was, I think, what about the propriety of brothers who decide to wear a beard? So I think the governing body had dealt with it and kind of basically said, it's not an issue, but it is if you want to do things on like a circuit level. If you want to progress in the religion, you know, if you want to give talks at circuit assemblies, you know, and be an elder doing away talks and, you know, etc., then you can't have a beard. But the Watchtower conductor said to me at that point, and just to add a bit of context, I then moved back into Frome at this point. I went back to my congregation in Somerset, where my parents were, and the brother who was doing the Watchtower, who personally didn't like beards, he approached me before the meeting and said, "Please do not put your hand up on paragraph 18. We'd appreciate it if you didn't comment on that paragraph."
Wow. They didn't want you to embarrass them.
No. I had to forego, like, you know, my time, because they knew I was like, I might have, you know, I wouldn't have been a bit sarcastic, as much as I would have felt like it, because it, you know, it was a bit of an issue for me in terms of the way I've been treated. But there was a potential opportunity for me to embarrass the body of elders. With that issue, but I was told, can you refrain from putting your hand up and commenting on that paragraph?
And that's the mindset of the whole organization. There's no well, we were wrong, we're sorry. You know, there's none of that. It's just pride and arrogance.
That's it. Yeah, you know. But when the rank and file do things wrong, you know, you got the book thrown at you essentially, and you're made an example of.
Yeah.
And what really annoyed me was after that meeting, that was on a Sunday, so the next Thursday meeting, 3 brothers turned up with beards.
Wow.
Just after that, you know. Yeah. So you could see, like, there were other brothers in the congregation who wanted to grow beards, but just, you know, they were afraid to do it because of what the elders were going to do to them. But, you know, I said, I'm just going to grow one anyway. It's my personal right, it's my personal choice. But yeah, as soon as that Watchtower had been brought out, they more brothers then turned up into the congregation with beards, and then the elders approached me after and said, "Oh, following that Watchtower, we'd like to, you know, invite you to do the mics again and all of this." And the kind of person I am, I really wanted to say, you know, get lost, but you know, I accepted, you know, to get my privileges back and then give talks again. But yeah, that was my first sort of real run-in with elders. I've been, you know, as a young kid, I kept my head down in the congregation, never really had any issues with elders, but yeah, that was my first sort of run-in with elders over it. And yeah, going forward, I think after that, I got married at 21, which was a bit of a young age looking back, and I think we only dated for about just under a year, because I sort of went into it on my video about when you caught somebody in the truth, that I think if you prolong your courting, then the elders will start sort of putting a bit of pressure on you. And I think a lot of young people get married in the truth for mixed reasons. But yeah, I was too young, too inexperienced, and I remember being on my honeymoon and thinking, I think I've made a mistake here. And then yeah, 10 weeks after I got married in 2015, I'd moved back in with my mum and dad. We'd separated temporarily. And And it was at this point I decided to become inactive. I just stopped going for a lot of personal issues. It wasn't necessarily to do with waking up or anything. I just, had a lot of issues going on in my personal life, and I stopped going to meetings. And I took up boxing to sort of channel my anger, and it was great, really. But in that time, I lived at home for a few months. That's when I started to do a bit more research on the Royal Commission, and then I stumbled across Lloyd's channel, and that's where it really started. But a couple of months after, we got into the memorial season, and obviously living at home, my dad's an elder, my mum's going. They really wanted me to come to the memorial. I remember them saying, look, if you can only come to one meeting this year, just come to the memorial. So I decided to go. And not long after that, I decided to reconcile my issues with my ex-wife. And then, but in saying that, I said to her, like, I've been to the memorial, I said, but I still don't really want to go to meetings for many reasons. But I didn't really go into the Royal Commission, or, I didn't want her to know that I was watching apostate videos, because I would have been disfellowshipped on the spot. I'm sure she would have took that to the elders. But then I went to the convention that year in 2016, which I believe was the Love Never Fails convention. And I just, giving a little bit of context to that, when I used to go boxing training in between that, it was on a Thursday night. And I would still go, even, me and my ex, we got a house together. And I said, look, before we got back together, I said, look, I'm happy to get back together and reconcile our issues, but I don't want to go to the meetings, which she was fine with initially. But then it got to Thursdays, and then that started to become an issue, because I'd get ready to go at the gym. She'd have to go to the meeting on her own. And then it got to convention season, and then I got roped into going to the convention. And I was kind of at a stage though, I thought, I've done the truth for, 22, 21 years. And I've kind of been in it, but I've never really thrown myself into it. And I'm at that age now where I'm potentially looking at other things, looking into scientific things a little bit more. I've stumbled across Lloyd's channel, I've seen the Royal Commission. And just giving an example of the level of control the organisation has on you, I had all this evidence in front of me, but I still wanted to prove it's the truth. So I hit a crossroads, and I was like, if I look at my life, what's going to be like in the next 5 to 10 years, will I be able to look back and say, look, did I really try the truth properly to, put the, my beliefs up to scrutiny? Did I really throw myself into it? Because then I can, if I do walk away from it in the future, I can look back and say, at least I tried it properly. So at that point, I walked away from the convention. As you do, you feel all spiritual after a convention, and I put all those issues to bed initially about the, with the Royal Commission and Lloyd's channel, and really threw myself into the organisation. Did a bit of pioneering, did part-time work, sort of work for myself, so I did a bit of painting, a bit of window cleaning, as you do, you're encouraged to take up menial work. And then, it got to about 18 months, and I was miserable, in my marriage, and I was miserable in the truth. I really tried, to apply Jehovah's principles into my marriage and into my personal life. But I just couldn't ignore the things that I'd read and listened to 18 months ago. I tried to, but I needed to come in with an open mind. So I left my marriage, and then I just stopped going to meetings. And then I met a worldly girl, and that's why I was disfellowshipped for dating a worldly girl. And that was a tough process. My brother alluded to it in the interview I did with him. They really wanted to hunt me down. And I moved out of my marriage home. I literally told nobody where I was going to move to. I just wanted to just lay low, shall we say. I just want to leave peacefully, because I don't want to be disfellowshipped. I don't want my family to shun me. But I'd have phone calls off the elders, and then they somehow found out where I lived. And I'd come home from work a few times, and they sat in my driveway.
Wow. That's crazy. I mean, I've heard some crazy stories of things like that. Elders like traveling across the country to to track someone down. It's like they think they're the police.
Yes, my dad's always told me that the elders aren't policemen, but they kind of are, really, aren't they? To be honest, And like with the beard issue, it got around the congregation that I was leaving my marriage, and I was, I'd done boxing, and I was going to get back into it and things like that. And I think the elders, again, wanted to make an example out of me, because they go, well, we can't let Jordan do what he wants to do, because then that's just a green light for everyone else if you want to leave the congregation. I just tried to leave covertly and quietly. Just no issues, just leave me alone. I'm going to go and do my own thing. But yeah, they turned up at my door. And the first thing the elder said to me was, he just looked at me with a look of disgust and said, "You're difficult to track down, aren't you?"
Oh,
And I was fuming at this point. And a lot of things were going through my mind, but I kept calm, and I said, "Where did you get my address from?" And he said, "Jehovah works in mysterious ways."
honestly, the arrogance.
Yeah. The elders. Yeah,
Like, who do they think they are?
Yeah. And I initially said, "Look, if you're not going to answer that question, I'm not answering your questions." And I walked in my door, shut the door, because I know a little bit about it. You're never really in that position, but I knew that my dad obviously was an elder, and he sort of said, "Look, if you want the elders to just leave you alone, just refuse to answer their questions, and just try and sort of just fade, shall we say, and just make yourself difficult to contact, and eventually they'll just leave you alone." And that's what I was trying to do initially. But after that conversation, 2 weeks later, they're back on my driveway, and they said, we found some pictures on social media, with you with another girl, and this was the worldly girlfriend. We were just seeing each other at the time, and they said, he knows this person in the truth. I said, no. And then obviously they wanted to pull me in for a judicial committee. I don't know how I managed to let myself do that, to be honest, but I had two elders cornering me on my driveway, and after they'd left and wanted to pull me in for a judicial, I had a neighbour come up to me and she said, "Are you okay?" She said, "It looks like you're being cornered a bit there." She said, "Who are those men? Are they like barristers or something?" I said, "Or policemen?" I go, "No." I said, "They're Jehovah's Witnesses." And she was just like, "Oh, if you'd have told me that, I would have rung the police for you." And I was just like, yeah. So I got cornered in my own flat.
That's terrible. Like, intimidating behaviour.
Yes, yeah, and I got sort of put under pressure. I just, like I said, I just wanted to fade, just wanted to be left alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got pulled in for a judicial, and obviously got disfellowshipped for having a worldly girlfriend, and well, here I am. So, my parents had contact with me for the week after because they knew I got disfellowshipped, but obviously you got to wait because you can appeal for the week, can't you? Yeah. So they kind of took advantage of that. And yeah, as soon as the week come up and it got announced at the meeting, yeah, that was it, really.
And what is your relationship with your parents now?
We've had a few family emergencies. The main one, my gran died in 2018. Occasionally I could speak to my parents, like occasionally I would ring them up. Living on your own, sometimes I did struggle a little bit. and wanted to speak to them, and sometimes they would pick the phone up to me earlier on, and it was just the same old, the arrangement. I got told countless times, we love Jehovah more than you. That's what it would always end in. And the amount of times it would always end in arguments and tears. And dealing with that trauma really put a strain on my relationship with this girl I was with outside of the truth. Because we broke up recently. And that was one of the main issues. Was really it was an amicable breakup between us. It wasn't bad or anything. But it was, there'd be some days where I'd come home from work and she wouldn't know how to talk to me, or wouldn't know if she could approach me or not, because I've just got a face on me, and she's like, what's going on inside me? And from an outsider's perspective, she hasn't got a clue how it all works. Being born and raised in it, you still can't get your head around it. So I couldn't expect someone who I just met and been in my life for a few years to understand the shunning arrangement. But yeah, that really took a toll, on my relationship. And I had days as well, sort of in the last couple of years, because I remember playing a game of golf on my own a couple of years ago, and I wasn't contemplating suicide. I'd never done that ever, but I walked off the golf course because I had a lot going on emotionally, and I just appreciated why some people don't want to be here no more, and which I could never understand before. But I wouldn't like self-harm or anything, or want to take my own life. But I remember coming off the golf course and thinking, I can really understand why some people don't want to be here no more. But along that journey, that's where I started to watch more of Lloyd's videos. And then my ex-girlfriend, she took me to the Natural History Museum. And that was a real eye-opener. Because it was funny, like on one of our first dates, I sort of explained quite early on that I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. I'm no longer one, but my parents are going to shun me and all of this. And that didn't bother her at the time, which I was quite surprised about, because I was coming with quite a bit of baggage. But yeah, we went to the Natural History Museum, and seeing firsthand, the different fossils and things like that. I was completely shut off to the idea of evolution and science. Even when I come out of it initially, for the first 6 months, I was like, I still wanted to believe in a God. But then, like I said, I was at a point where I could go in with an open mind and sort of educate myself, essentially. And even though we're not together today, I kind of touched on it in my first video, but I'll always be grateful to her, because she was the first person in the world who showed me that there are good people out there. There are people who will love you unconditionally, and she encouraged me to get a career, and she really helped me in the transition from JW to being a normal person, essentially. So that kind of opened my eyes, and but having to rebuild your social network was quite difficult.
I can relate to that so much, because I had exactly the same experience. When I met my girlfriend, just how good a person she is, that really hastened my waking up. Because I realized that, well, hang on a minute. I was always taught that people like this only existed in the organization.
Yeah.
I was taught that worldly people aren't supposed to be this nice and this good.
That's what I mean. I've watched quite a few of your videos, but that's the one that touched me the most, really, on your channel, when you relayed your experience of, because obviously I think you said you got married in the truth quite young, and and our experiences are quite similar. But then when you mentioned about, your current relationship with your worldly girlfriend, I could relate to that totally, and it was nice to know that someone has been through what I've been through, and it can relate to what I've been through. And yeah, that's where I kind of sort of stumbled across your channel, and personally related to it. That kind of touched me, really, that experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was going back to where I was when I'd just come out of it. went to the National History Museum, started to read more, which was funny, you know, because in the 20 odd years I hated reading, and you know, my dad would always be like, you know, do the Watchtower, make sure you prepare for the meetings, all of this, and I hated it. But since I've been out the truth, I actually do more reading now than I did when I was in it, which is quite ironic. And you know, I've picked up sort of Richard Dawkins' book on the God delusion, and I've read his Outgrowing God book, and a couple of years ago she took me to one of his seminars in London, which was really good. And it feels, I'm trying to find the word here, you just feel great that you've sort of done your own research and you validated it with evidence. You know, you're no longer in a belief system where you've got evidence that can debunk it, but you've got to, you know, you take faith out of it, you know.
Yeah.
And that was great for me personally. That was a revelation to see what I'd been taught for 20 odd years was a lie, you know. And you know, this isn't God's one true religion, but also, you know, debunking Noah's Ark and things like that, and you know, the Earth's 4.5 billion years old. There's evidence of life way past 6,000 years ago. But if I'd put that kind of evidence to my parents, they just refused to look into it. You know, I remember growing up, if we were watching David Attenborough on a Sunday afternoon, as soon as evolution or anything like that, they'd get the remote, that's it.
Gone.
As soon as he says 2 billion years ago, the remote comes out and it's like, as soon as he mentions million or billion, that's it, it's going off.
So yeah, that was always interesting. But and then on a personal level, because of, you know, what it's done for me emotionally, the shunning arrangement, and again I touched on it with my brother in the interview the other day. You don't really know what it's like until it happens to you. You can't compare it to anything. And I've been through a lot of hurt, like I'm sure a lot of all ExJWs do. But for the last 18 months, I've really wanted to pluck the courage up and set up a YouTube channel. So now I've finally done it. But yeah, I wanted to have my say, and it's time to make more awareness of what this cult does to people and what it does to its members, you know. And it's kind of just sickening really to see what, you know, the governing body expect of you and what they want from you. You know, I still love my parents to this day, and I'll always love them, and me and my brother will. When, you know, if they picked the phone up tomorrow and said we're coming out of it, I wouldn't harbour any grudge. I'd just carry on like nothing's changed. But it does hurt, and it's hard to deal with the countless times they said to us, Jehovah's first, and we love Jehovah more than you. Really, it's difficult, you know, and it's always going to be difficult. But I think, like for all of us, it's always going to be with us. But I suppose it's how you deal with it going forward, isn't it? Really, and I think for me personally, setting up the channel, it's kind of like a therapy in itself for me, really.
Absolutely. That's exactly why I started mine and why I uploaded my first video and then my second and then my third. I found it extremely therapeutic just to get it all off my chest.
Yeah, no, I totally relate. And then in a short time that I've been on YouTube, the response that I've had, and even on the support, and you know, since stumbling across your channel and since we've been engaging in conversation, it's nice. There is a community out there, and that's what I want to give back to. You know, I want to give other witnesses or ex-witnesses a platform to come and, you know, relay their experiences, provide support, and also help, you know, ones who are trying to wake up, really. So yeah, no, it's great. It feels great to be on the other side of it. You just feel free is the only word to describe it, really, isn't it? To be honest, you've got freedom. That's the biggest word that have been said to me for the last couple of weeks. You know, and that's what even you said in your first comment on my first video that I did. Welcome to your freedom, and it is. You just feel free.
Yeah. Do you feel that you're much happier now, even though you know, being shunned and not having contact with your family is extremely painful. But despite that, do you feel that you're much happier now than you were as a witness?
Absolutely. Even when I left, and it was all fresh, because my brother felt the same, and we're very passionate people anyway. And when something's taken away from you, it really hurts. And the first emotion, I think, for speaking for all XJWs, I mean, everybody is different, but I think anger is the overriding emotion. I had a lot of anger for a good couple of years. But amongst all of that, I was still happy. I was happier in my life because I was learning about, A, the natural world and how human life did come into existence, because I've always been quite fascinated by science anyway, but being a witness you have to suppress that. But then, speaking in more general terms, my life's great. I've got myself a career now, it's a career that I can progress in and do well at, rather than just picking up menial work. I've learned there are genuine people out there.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm a huge admirer of Ricky Gervais, and I've been to see some of his comedy shows, but there's a few of his quotes that I really like, and I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head now. I think it was his quote where he says, "We're all going to die soon, so just have a laugh." You know, so I've learned to enjoy life more, have a laugh. You know, I've learned a sense of humour is really important in just everyday life. But also, I think the hardest thing for me to undo with the indoctrination side of things, I don't know if this was for you, you've got to undo that idea of, I'm going to live forever.
Oh my goodness. You hit the nail on the head. Yeah, absolutely.
That was really hard, and I think I've only really come to terms with that and dealt with that in the last year.
I'm still trying. I'm still trying. I mean, the idea that one day I won't be here anymore, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. You know, I accept it on a intellectual level, but emotionally, it's really difficult, especially when, as you get a little bit older, I'm a few years, more than a few years older than you, and you know, when you wake up with aches and pains and your eyesight starts failing you and stuff like that, it's like signs of, you know, advancing age, that it's really difficult to come to terms with. You know, it's really difficult.
That's been the you know, aside from the shunning from my parents, that's been the thing I've struggled with the most. And I don't like the thought of it, but I kind of just had to, for me personally, I've just had to make peace with it. But it allows me now to enjoy life, because I've learned how fragile it is. And you know, if you want to do something in life, just go and do it. Whereas, you know, as a witness, you don't do things because it's like, well, I'm going to live forever anyway, so, you know, this is all temporary, you know, I'll do it in the new system.
Exactly. I mean, I remember being at an assembly and hearing a brother say, when you go on holiday and you get to your apartment or your hotel room, you don't go and plumbing a new washing machine, because you know you're not going to be there for a long time. It's just temporary. He said that's the idea we should have with this world. You know, and messages like that, I really took to heart. I really took those things seriously. You know, I remember I even used to impress that upon my kids. You know, I remember. Do you remember Dr. Winston? Is this this doctor? I think he's a professor. He has like brown curly hair and a thick bushy moustache, and he does these programs on BBC where he like charts the progress of children right back from when they're born, and then like every 5 years they go back to the same kids and like chart their development.
Right.
And I remember one of his shows, they'd done this experiment to try and understand how children at different ages perceive time. So they got children from a range of ages and they sat them in a room, and then they put a piece of chocolate in front of them. And they said, you can have this piece of chocolate now, or you can wait for 5 minutes and have a whole bar. Which one do you want? and they found that children up until the age of about 5 always went for the piece of chocolate now, whereas older children waited the 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because to them, 5 minutes isn't a long period of time, but for children under 5 minutes might as well be forever. So I used to use that as an illustration to my children, just to say the world that we're living in now is the one piece of chocolate, but the new system is the whole bar. I used to tell them that. So I said, a sign of being spiritually mature is not investing in this world and just waiting until the new system to do everything that you want. I really feel bad that I used to tell them that now, but I was completely sold on the idea of the paradise and the new system and everything. To me, it was 100% real.
Yeah. It's, even though we're on the other side of it, we're still dealing with implications and restrictions that are still put upon us now, and that's what I think is hugely unfair. I think with the shunning, it's, and then the idea of having to undo the indoctrination of I'm not going to live forever. It screws you up, really. Like, I mean, for me, the greatest analogy I sort of, for my own experience, was when I came out, I just had to hit the reset button. I had to restart everything, and even though I was still young enough, I like even getting a good job and a career. Obviously, that was discouraged. So when you put all of that together, the amount of pressure you've got on yourself to fit into the normal world, learn what the world's are like, find a job, and then having to deal with, like you said, not going to live forever. That's an awful lot to put on yourself mentally.
It is a lot. It's a huge amount. I remember once my girlfriend asked me, what goals do you have? What dreams and ambitions do you have? And I sat down and thought about it, and I said to myself, I don't know. I've never thought about it before. And at that moment, I felt like I wasn't even a real person. I felt like I wasn't a real person because I literally did not know what I wanted to do with my life. And it's a really horrible thing to come to realize, that your personal development has been stunted. When you grow up as a witness. But I think you really don't realize it. You think you know what the world is all about and you understand everything, and you know what's going to happen in the future, but you really don't. And when that realization hits you, it's a real, it really messes with your mind.
And I don't mean this in a good way, but it's just clever what the governing body have done, isn't it, really? How to retain the membership, but then if people are strong enough in themselves to speak out and leave it, everyone's got to deal with some kind of baggage. And that's what I think is incredibly cruel, amongst other things going on currently in the organisation. But on a personal level, the struggle you have to deal with when you essentially start in the real world, it's just cruel. What's been put upon us, and like we've said, more people need to speak out against it, really, because otherwise nothing gets done.
Exactly.
So it's been a tough few years, but to sum it up, even though it's been the toughest period of my life, it's been the happiest period of my life. I've learned an awful lot about myself, and I know myself now, and I've also learnt there are genuine people in the world, and
that's great.
And there's more genuine people in the world that I've come across than in 23 years as a Jehovah's Witness. I don't know if you're into football yourself.
Yeah, I'm a Liverpool supporter.
I don't know if you ever played witness football.
Yes, I have.
We used to, when me and my brother were younger, we had our witness football every Sunday evening. And having played football with brothers for years, and then when I first stepped into a worldly 11-a-side team, I had more problems playing with brothers than I did with normal people. The level of competition amongst some brothers, and it ended up with people like grabbing each other around the scruff of the neck, and you bring an atmosphere back into the congregation. Absolutely. And it got that bad at one point they had to have a local needs on football, and we stopped it for a few months because of the disruption it caused in the congregation.
I've actually heard of things like that many, many times. I mean, in fact, in years ago, before any of the kids were born, a few congregations in my circuit, we had like a not football, but like American football. We had like a flag football, I think it's called, or touch football. I can't remember what it was called, but it's sort of like American football.
Yeah.
So we had like a little league going. So we used to play other congregations, and there was this there was this brother in this in one of the other congregations, and he was huge. He was huge. He actually used to play American football in America. He used to live over there, and to practice, he used to tie a mattress. I mean, this is what I heard. I heard that he would tie a mattress onto a tree, and then just tackle the mattress, and that's how he would train and like practice. So, so we were playing against his congregation, and he fell on top of me quite a few times, which was accidental. But there was one time where he tackled me to the ground, and he trod on my head, blinded me in my left eye. I was blind for a good week or so. I couldn't see out of my left eye after he trod on my eye. I dislocated my shoulder, and it was just so violent and competitive and aggressive. It was absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
It was absolutely crazy. I was injured so badly I couldn't even bathe myself. I laugh when I look back on it now, but yeah, the attitude was really bad, really bad.
Yeah, but it always, like, you know, having a little bit of a joke, it always made me laugh because obviously, you know, in some of the Watchtowers you've got examples in the paradise of people playing football, and I'm like, God, that's going to end in arguments even in the paradise. It's still going to be the same football we had on a Sunday, you know, where brothers wouldn't talk to us, you know. And, but yeah, we had to have a local needs on it. I remember when I was about 13, because it just brought an atmosphere into the congregation.
Yeah, I think that the reason for that is that the witness lifestyle is such a repressive one in so many different ways. You know, you're just so repressed that any opportunity you have to let loose, you just go overboard. Because this is such a common thing. You know, it's with sports and with drinking and like partying, any type of like recreation, it just goes way out of hand. More so than the wicked worldly people that, you know, that they have such a stigma against.
Yeah, it's funny, like even in those small areas, if you've got an opportunity to, you know, be, like you said, express yourself a bit more, people just go overboard because you're not yourself when you're a witness.
No, you're holding everything in.
They call it the new personality, but it's the personality that they want you to, you know, adhere to. Exactly. We're all. It takes away individuality.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
If you can't be yourself in something, it doesn't surprise me people are like this, you know, because I was like it, and you know, you're just dying to be yourself, and it's quite sad. You're just lying to yourself, really, aren't you? You know, you take the beliefs out of it. You're just lying to yourself on a personal level. Like, you can't be your true self. You can't pursue certain interests. You know, because, you know, like, I mean, I like comedy a lot, and I'm on top of being a Ricky Gervais fan, which I could never tell any witness about. I'm a huge Lee Evans fan as well. And I was lucky enough to go to his last tour in 2014, and I remember some witnesses got wind that I went to Lee Evans, and I got not counselled on it, but I got advised by elders, you know, should you really be going to watch, you know, things like this, and it's just like, even the small things you just micromanage. It's not just what you watch and what you go and watch. It's like thought crime as well, isn't it? You can't think about certain things.
Yeah, exactly.
And trying to undo all of that is tough. I think the biggest challenge I've had, amongst other things, is learning to socialise with worldly people, because I've had such a stigma to them for 20 odd years, and can't go anywhere near them, can't socialise with them. Now that I can and I'm free to do it,
It's like you kind of like don't know how.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, you kind of like, what have I got, you know, I'm a little bit socially awkward sometimes, because it's like I'm not used to you know, interacting with people like this. And yeah, when you learn that the world isn't what the governing body says it is, it's just a real eye-opening experience. But yeah, it's been a long, tough 4 years, but also, yeah, definitely the happiest for me personally. It's great, and then to finally get here where I am, get myself out onto YouTube, it's brilliant, really. You know, and
That's great. I mean, I've had similar experiences as well. It's like you have to learn a whole new social etiquette, you know. So there have been times where I felt like I was a foreigner or an alien or something, because I just didn't feel comfortable, like I fitted in, or I didn't know how to relate to anyone around me. You know, but yeah, it's a learning process.
yeah, I like my ex partner. She's a hairstylist, and I remember I'd occasionally, not long after I left, we'd go out drinking and socialising with them. And even to this day, it does annoy me a little bit, because they'd go up to my ex girlfriend and sort of say, you know, what's the matter with Jordan? Like, is he all right? And you know, like, you've just got this face on you the whole time, because you're dealing with the shunning side of things, but then trying to learn to interact with normal people, for me personally, has been a real challenge. And yeah, it's about, you know, just, yeah, like you said, you've got to learn this social etiquette, you know. And I think witnesses do come across as arrogant to people in the real world, because subconsciously, even when you're out in the ministry, you think you're better than everybody because you've got all the answers, don't you? You think, right, you know, you pity people, don't you?
Yeah.
And it's undoing that, like, you know, they're equals. You know, they're not any better than us. We haven't got all the answers. It's undoing all that arrogance as well, which is, and you don't realise you like it at the time, do you?
Not at all. Not at all. When you're a witness, you actually think you're one of the nicest people around.
Yeah.
Do you find that you're a lot more empathetic generally to people now that you're not a witness anymore?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a lot more what's the word? Well, yeah, like you said, empathetic, but yeah, I'm a lot more attuned to it than what I was. And being in the real world, you're more aware of more emotional issues people deal with.
Yeah.
And you know, everybody handles them differently. There isn't a set way to handle it. And I think, you know, if you've got emotional or mental issues in the truth, you know, they discourage really therapy, things like that. So I'm more open to the idea of therapy and things like that if I needed it. Whereas as a witness, it's like, just read this article and, you know, just keep praying, keep meditating and read literature. And that's not how you deal with it, do you, really? You know, that's not how you deal with your issues. So, yeah, definitely I'm a lot more empathetic towards people and issues to deal with on an emotional level.
Yeah, I find that too. You know, because as a witness, all the problems will be solved, you know, in the new system after Armageddon. So you turn a blind eye to, you know, people's struggles and people's suffering. I mean, on some you do feel sorry for them, but that you're not motivated to do anything about it, because Jehovah will sort it out. You know, any day now. It's just around the corner.
Yeah.
Jehovah's going to come and sort everything out.
A real good point's come to mind, and it's just jogged my memory. Whilst I was waking up, whilst you speak about that, Jehovah's going to sort it. When I lost faith in God completely, even when, you know, after coming out of being a Jehovah's Witness, the main reason, aside from scientific evidence, that I lost faith in God is because I was brought up to believe in an intravenous God. And, you know, countless times my mum would tell me growing up, or, you know, when I lived on my own and I was struggling, Jehovah always provided. You know, I just about had enough money to pay all my bills, and all of those, you know, convenient stories where, you know, they say God's hand God provided. But then I would go, well, what about cancer in children? What about children who are starving on the other side of the earth? So you're going to tell me he's intervening, but he's only intervening in your life. You know, you live in the Western world, you've got food, you've got clothes, you've got somewhere to sleep. But what about people in the real world who've got none of that? But he,
Exactly.
you know, his purpose, and you know, helping you find a Bible study or helping you find the money to pay your bills for the month is more important than, you know, those issues, you know, around the world.
That's right.
And then when I learned about the cover-up of child abuse, you know, the governing body harp on about, oh, we've got JW Broadcasting, and now we've got this new studio that they've got for, you know, for the new Jesus series coming out. And they talk about, like, you know, Jehovah's hand has played a part in how they found that studio. And then I'm there like, what's, like, you're telling me a studio is more important to Jehovah rather than exposing and dealing with paedophiles in his organisation? You know, exactly. I would have more sense to believe in it if his Holy Spirit, you know, filtered out people like that instead of covering it all up. But then they sit there on a global level and say, no, Jehovah's hand has, you know, played a part in us getting this new studio. And then on my mum saying Jehovah's hand and his Holy Spirit helped me get that Bible study or pay my bills for the month. And that just didn't wash with me anymore.
No, that's a really good point. In fact, I remember Ricky Gervais saying something similar. He was talking about prayer, and he said, you know, there are kids starving and dying all over the world all the time. What makes you think that God is going to help you pass your driving test? You know, it just makes so much sense when you look at it from that point of view.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at it from a scientific point of view. I mean, I am an atheist, but how Richard Dawkins defines atheism is perfect, really. Science can never totally disprove anything, as you know, so we can't totally disprove the existence of God. But what I do reject is all the gods that are on offer in, you know, today's society. I reject those gods. I don't refute there could be a designer. I just think probably there isn't a designer. But in terms of the religions and the gods that are on offer today, I reject all of those, you know, to be honest. And they're talking about Ricky Gervais. One of his other quotes I really like. He said, "There's nearly 4,000 gods in existence today, but he said yours is real. Not everyone else's. Just your God is real." You know, and that's the same for the theme for, I think, for religion as a whole. To be honest, you know, and if you believe your God intervenes like we did, but then you see the injustice in the world, it just, like, you know, it just sent me the other way, to be honest. That's when I lost faith, you know, in a God, or in a God that I've, you know, that's put on offer to me, you know, in society today. So who knows, there might be an intelligent designer out there, but it's certainly not a God. certainly isn't Jehovah, put it that way. You know, the God I've been told to worship.
Absolutely not.
And I don't know about yourself, but it's just coming out of the truth, I really learned the stark contrast between the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't even believe that they're the same God.
No. Or he's got split personality disorder, one of the two, you know. But, like, the levels of genocide and, like, I mean, me and my brother joked about it the other day, and I saw your comment in the interview where Jehovah would go as far as, you know, wiping out complete generations, children and cattle and things like that. And I'm there like, what the hell did the cow do? You know, what have the animals done to deserve a harsh punishment like this? You know, but you just accept it, don't you? You just think, oh, well, that was then, you know.
Yeah, like it's like all witnesses have this shelf in the back of their head, and all the things that don't make sense and that they don't understand, they just put it on the shelf in the back of their head. But one day, eventually, that shelf will just break under the weight of everything that's on it.
Yeah, no, it's sad because it's just like, if you take faith out of a lot of, if I said to, you know, like, even if I say use my parents as an example, I said, you need to answer this question, but you're not allowed to use the word faith. I think there'll be a lot of questions they wouldn't be able to answer. And that's quite sad, really. not not attacking them personally, but again, it's what this cult does to people, and it's just incredibly cool, really, and like the mental conditioning of it. It just you're not encouraged to question anything, really, are you? And you know, and then we're like using the Old Testament and the New Testament as an example, but then since I've been out, I never realised there were certain Watchtower and Awake articles that condone shunning. In like I think it was in 1947.
Yeah.
They said it was a pagan practice, but then a few years later, then it's like they endorse shunning.
Yeah.
But that's all allowed to go. That's you got to that's the new light doctrine.
Yeah, that new light thing just makes no sense whatsoever. It makes no sense. The only way a new light would make sense is if the governing body held up their hands and says we're not God's sole channel of communication. If that you can't have it both ways. You can't say that you're God's sole channel of communication and you're the direct link between God and humankind, and at the same time say every now and again we need to update what we say because we've got a new light. You can't have it both ways.
No. And Lloyd summed that up perfectly as well, didn't he? Because he was like, just sort of quoting him, or he was sort of saying, why would Jehovah intentionally lie to his organisation on the earth?
Exactly.
If he's with this all loving, all intelligent, perfect God, why would he lie to his organisation, his faith and discreet slave on the earth? And it was a point my brother made to me early on when I was waking up, and his theory is they're just buying more time.
Exactly.
They have to buy more time because they realise people are getting fed up now, and people like my parents, they've been in an awful long time and the end still isn't here. Because we both were raised in it. My mum and dad always said to me and my brother, you two will never leave school.
Yeah.
You two will never get a job. You both won't get married. You probably won't ever have children. Be surprised if you drive a car. And we've both done all of that, and I've got divorced, and my brother's got a kid on the way.
Yeah.
And we're still waiting.
I mean, I've spoken to people in their 60s and 70s who were told exactly the same thing. In their 60s and 70s. And now they have children who have children who have children.
But it's the same, it's all done in Jehovah's time.
Yeah.
And, looking at the Bible, 6,000 years of suffering, even though they say that's not a lot of time for Jehovah, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of suffering for generations of humans. But that's, we'll just carry on suffering, shall we? Like we said earlier about the intervening part, and he only wants to intervene to, expand his will and his purpose. So JW Studios is more important than what's going on with starving children who haven't got clean water. Exactly. doesn't sit well with me personally.
If the Jehovah God that the witnesses teach is real, he's a narcissist, and he only cares about things that pertain to himself, which isn't the kind of God that I think I want to worship, or I believe even deserves worship.
Absolutely. And even I'm not going to go in too graphically with this, but I learned as well as a teenager, it seems God is more interested in what you do with your sexual organs as well than again social issues around the world. It's like, don't have sex before marriage, you can't do this, you can't do that. So he's more interested in what you do privately than again other issues around the world. And like you said, it's just complete narcissism.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems as if he doesn't want you to get involved in anything that you could potentially enjoy or like more than serving him. That's what it comes down to. It's not necessarily because sex before marriage is morally wrong. It's because it's something that might take you away from him. That's what it comes down to. Anything that could take you away from him, or making him the first and foremost thing,
But so I obviously it's nice to talk to another ExJW, but on a slightly different subject. I've always wanted to ask people this: how did you feel when you celebrated your first birthday and your first Christmas?
Wow, that's a really good question. My first Christmas was extremely awkward and uncomfortable. There were certain things about it that I really liked. I liked the sense of togetherness, the feeling of togetherness and warmth and love. I really, really enjoyed that. But I was still mentally in the religion when I celebrated my first Christmas, so it felt very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it was a potential deal breaker with me and my girlfriend because she's an absolute Christmas fanatic. She used to work in a Christmas shop. She absolutely
Right.
loves Christmas. And I remember the first time I told her that I'm not going to feel comfortable celebrating Christmas. Goodness me, that went down like a lead balloon. It really did. But we came to a compromise. I said that I will get involved as much as I'm comfortable with, but there were certain things that I didn't feel comfortable doing. So I was kind of like just like dipping my toe in,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah.
My first birthday, I didn't feel as bad about my first birthday as I did about my first Christmas.
Mm.
Um, I was extremely happy. It was a lovely day. I felt a little bit of guilt, but mostly I was just overwhelmed with being made to feel so special.
Yeah.
It's not something that I was used to. I wasn't used to being made a fuss of or being made to feel special or
Yeah.
and I cried several times. I don't feel bad about saying this. I cried several times on my birthday because for that reason.
Mm.
But the second Christmas, it was complete opposite. I went in head first, and I absolutely loved
Yeah.
it. I felt no guilt whatsoever. I just it looked like Christmas exploded in my room. I had so many decorations.
Right.
I absolutely loved it. And my
Yeah.
second birthday, which was only last month,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
so special as well. It was a really good day.
Mm.
Yeah. What about yourself?
Phew, yeah, I'll never forget, Christmas 2017, because I mentioned it to you when we spoke the other day, but my ex girlfriend's family, they live in Bexley Heath. Um, they're not religious at all. So we went down there for Christmas. And, you know, it was remembering to buy people presents and cards, which was difficult for me because I'd never done it. Even to this day, remembering people's birthdays now is a nightmare because I'm not used to doing it. But in terms of the Christmas, I felt like I was committing, sorry, not completing, committing a gross sin. Even though I'm disfellowshipped, I'm shunned by my parents. Part of me inside felt like I'm committing a really bad sin here. And I do regret it to this day. I even, unfortunately, upset the atmosphere a little bit with the family because I still took it upon myself to tell people the origins of Christmas.
Oh,
And because they sort of, I was asked, so, well, why have you never done Christmas? And then even though I wasn't a witness, everything was coming out of my mouth was a pagan celebration, and it's nothing to do with Jesus at all. All of this, it's a bad celebration, and all of this, and I kind of upset the atmosphere a little bit, and I do regret that to this day. But it's just to show you like the level of control that again, mentally you're still in to a small degree, even if you're out of it, and you've had your family torn away from you. But it's funny you mentioned about the first birthday, because I felt exactly the same. Because for my first birthday, my ex took me to see The Lion King at the Lyceum Theatre, which is what I've always wanted to do, and then she treated me to a meal at the Shard.
that's lovely.
And like, I had a few tears in my eyes, if I'm honest. Because I've always wanted to see The Lion King and it was amazing, but she took me into this meal up the Shard. We had a great view of London, and it was the same point you made. It was just nice for somebody, to make all this effort for you to feel special for a day, something that you've never had, before. And Christmases got better after that because obviously as time went on, the indoctrination, I undid it and let it go. But yeah, my partner, we we put up a Christmas, she put a Christmas tree up and did all the decorations, because I didn't know what I was doing with all of that. And it was weird. I remember coming home from work, you know, just before I finished work for the year, and went down to London for my first Christmas, and the Christmas tree was up. And it was really weird for me. Really, really weird. But now, yeah, absolutely. It's like last Christmas just gone, I celebrated it with my brother and his family up here, and it's great. It's what it should be.
Yeah.
I feel gutted that I'll never understand the magic of Christmas as a child. We'll miss out on that side of things, but you know, if I have children of my own one day, I will make a point of really, really trying hard with Christmas and birthday so they can enjoy it, because at least I've missed out as a child. I don't want that for them, you know, when I have a child. But yeah, the Christmas and birthdays thing, yeah, it was a strange time, but yeah, I got a slight regret on how I celebrated my first one, but again, it's what indoctrination does to you even whilst you're outside of it.
Exactly.
I mean, the way I see it is that what matters the most is how you make people feel around you.
Yeah.
You know, that's more important than what the origin of Christmas is, or any kind of holiday, you know, whether it's pagan or not. I mean, the whole pagan thing is ridiculous anyway, because there's so much that we do that's pagan.
Wedding rings are pagan, deck of cards, things like that.
So many things we do that are pagan. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is how you treat people around you, how you make them feel, how they make you feel. That's more important than all of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like the religious side of it's gone anyway. You know, it's a time to spend time with your family. It's more of an end of year celebration. You know, have a good opportunity for the family to get together, have a bit of fun, have some time off work, enjoy some food, exchange gifts, and then it's a nice way to go into another year, and then you start again for another year. The pagan and religious side of it is gone. Exactly. And it's funny you mention that, because I'll never forget that article that was on jw.org about they've updated their policy on piñatas.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
And I will paraphrase it. It's not an actual direct quote exactly, but it's speaking along the lines of if it doesn't have its religious or pagan origins, essentially, like if in the world today, if the religious side or the historical side is no longer recognised, it's okay to have piñatas. And then the first thing I did, well, what about Christmas then?
Christmas, exactly. What about birthdays? Yeah.
Yeah, but
what about saying cheers when you have a drink?
To this day, there is no scripture in the Bible that says you can't celebrate birthdays. It just puts them in bad light because, John got beheaded at Herod's birthday, and I can't remember the other instance in the Bible they mentioned it, but that doesn't mean, that's nothing to say you can't celebrate it. But it all goes back to the point you mentioned a few minutes ago. If there's anything that could potentially take you away from the organisation, it's just a no-go. Regardless of the evidence, regardless of, is it pagan, is it still religious to this day, how is it widely accepted in the Western world or the 21st century? It's just,
Yeah, it's just a method of control. It's another method of control.
Absolutely. It's just sad, really. And like I just said, with even coming out of it and what I was coming out of my mouth for my first Christmas, I'll never forget it. But it's one of my biggest regrets to this day. Talking about the origins of Christmas, it didn't go down too well, shall we say?
Well, don't beat yourself up too much. I mean, that's the nature of indoctrination.
Yeah. It's sad, but we're still here, and
yeah.
And you've got plenty more Christmases left where you can fully embrace it.
Exactly, I've got plenty of time to make up for, but on a birthday level, you said you're only 2. We've only celebrated. I think I've done 3 or 4, so I've only done a couple. So, but it's just that it did feel weird initially, but whereas now it's like I look forward to the Christmas period, and I look forward to your birthday. You can look forward to it in the calendar, and you can get all excited about it, whereas obviously you couldn't before. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's been absolutely great talking to you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me on, Riley. I really appreciate it.
It's been great. It never ceases to amaze me how many commonalities there are, between all of us, ex-witnesses, you know, the common elements to our stories is just, you know, I expect it now, but hearing it, it's really validating, and it just never ceases to amaze me.
Yes, and likewise. And like I said earlier in the video, for me personally, there's like you said with the similarities, but I think there's a lot of similarities between our stories, and that's what I can relate to, and that's why I sort of really warmed to your channel when you were delved into about your previous marriage, and now hearing about how birthdays and Christmas were for you. It's like, you know, I'm not the only one, you know, so it's really nice to know we've all got the same struggles, but, you know, we're all there to support each other as well.
Likewise. Okay, well, thanks again for joining me.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, Riley.
And thank you, viewers, for watching. If you haven't already done so, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Please proceed to the Jexit in an orderly fashion, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching to the very end of the video. If you haven't already done so, please like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. If you like my work and want to help me continue doing it, please support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Jexit_2020. And with that, I'd like to sincerely thank these very special patrons who make these videos possible.